We love Zencaster because it allows us to record the audio for our podcast and create the video segments we use for our weekly Sister Scoop episodes. Zencaster has helped us make content capture simple.
It's now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Log in using your browser and start recording a high-quality podcast right away. Record studio-quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests, and feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable.
If you've thought about podcasting before and realized that you need a lot of different tools and services, those days are over. With Zencastr's all-in-one podcasting platform, you can create your podcast in one place and distribute it to Spotify, Apple, and other major destinations.
Just go to zencastr.com/pricing and use our code SistersAssembled, and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. We want you to have the same easy experiences we do for all of our podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story.
Katie and I are always hungry, and one snack we both love is beef jerky. That's why we're so excited to tell you about one of our favorite jerky brands, Matt Hat Jerky.
Matt Hat's delicious taste makes it a great snack, and the variety of flavors, including original, black truffle, and my personal favorite, roasted garlic, means there's a flavor for everyone. Plus, it's local to the area where we grew up in, which we just love.
Use the link in the show notes below to get some Matt Hat Jerky for yourself, and make sure to use our coupon code SistersAssembled for 10% off. Hello, listeners, and welcome to Sisters Assembled. Now that we have wrapped covering all of X-Men 97, we have a special series of episodes coming up for you where we're going to give our fun fan casts to all of the main, or the majority of the main characters from the animated series. And we thought we'd put a little bit of a twist on this series by bringing in friend of the show, Davis, to join us for our next few episodes, where we're going to go 3 characters at a time and each share 2 actors that we think could fit the role. So, because we have a lot of actors to talk about in the next episode, or the rest of this episode, I'm going to kick it over to Katie to give us a start on Wolverine.
Okay, so I think the first choice that I am putting forward is not a shock to most people, and that's, of course, Harry Potter himself, Daniel Radcliffe.
Same girl, same.
Yeah, I figured we were going to share at least that one, because he's been an ongoing fan cast, and also it's just been like an ongoing rumor with him for the past, I don't even know how many years at this point, but let's be real, he's got the range. We all saw that he could act at 11 already. He carried an entire franchise on his back. He could do it again. So I definitely could see him doing it.
Well, not to mention, you want to talk about acting chops, he just got his first Tony nomination for his run on Broadway. So not only can he do it in the movies, but he is killing it live 8 shows a week. So yeah, Daniel Radcliffe. And from like a physical standpoint, he has that kind of short, kind of bulkier physique that I think we're all expecting in Logan. And to your point, he is definitely someone who a lot of people have talked about. We've all seen the fan art, and I would lose my mind. I would absolutely die if Daniel Radcliffe got cast as Logan.
Yeah, he's definitely, when I was doing this, I was like, well, this is going to be the most clear choice because it's been the biggest rumor. But I went, and actually, this one's kind of contested on the internet. I've seen a lot of Reddit threads where it's either been like, yeah, I totally see it, or yeah, I don't. But this one, I got to admit, I came up with in my head, didn't do the research, and then did the research afterwards. So I was glad to see other people, though, had casted this person in their fan cast. And that's another short king, Zac Efron. Love of my life since I was about 4. And I just have to say, I'm pretty sure I've said on this podcast before that I watched Iron Claw like 17 times.
Oh, yeah.
And he was phenomenal in it. Like, he deserves any award you can give him for that movie. He was so good.
I cried in that movie. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
It was amazing. And so I think he can do it. Some people were like, oh, he's too pretty. I just want to let you guys know, if you go on and you search Zac Efron Wolverine and you look at some of the pictures that are actually like not the fan art, but of him somewhat recently, where he's kind of got a beard. He has a more rugged look going for him. He's got the physique. and he's got the look. Like, he can definitely do it.
I agree.
I also am offended on Hugh's behalf at the implication that Hugh is not good looking. Like the idea that, oh, Zac Efron's too pretty. Excuse me, have you seen Hugh Jackman? Like, come on, people.
Yeah, I mean, he's been pretty since day one.
Yeah, and speaking on that too, I think those are great picks, but mainly from like a physicality and stature point, simply because I think Hugh Jackman's what, 6'2", 6'3".
He's a big
but
guy.
Wolverine canonically in the comics is like what, 5'2", 5'3".
Short
He's
kid.
as tall as
So,
T and me.
I think those two were perfect because, like, yes, he's like super big and ripped, but the whole point is I think his stature is such an important part of his character, because for all my short kings out there, I'm sure they can acknowledge that because they're small, they have a lot of fury inside them. You know, like it's like everyone mistreats me. Oh, because I'm short, we'll get ready for the claw. So I think they're perfect, because he's more, in my, like, growing up, like I always thought Wolverine was like a stocky, short, powerful, grounded character, whereas don't get me wrong, Hugh Jackman's great, but I think having an actor like Zac Efron and like Daniel, who are shorter, I think can bring something new to the character where, you know, maybe Hugh Jackman couldn't, simply because of how tall they are.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, personally, I know Daniel Radcliffe has been the big name, but I prefer the Zac Efron fan casting on my end out of my two, mainly because I need to see Daniel like really jack up for this. Like, he's really got to put the muscle on for this role because it is Wolverine. Let's be real, he's still ripped. Versus Zac Efron is known to be extremely muscly. I mean, again,
Take a look
Iron
at
Claw,
Baywatch.
he put on again a lot of muscle for that role, and he killed it. So I actually think giving him a slight beard, letting him kind of look rugged, like some pictures I've seen, I think he could do it really well. And I also think he has the acting chops. You want to talk about range? He's done it. He's done the singing. He's done the like sad stories. He's done the heartbreaks. He's done the funny. Like, he has the range to do it all.
He made everybody think he could actually play basketball. So
Literally, I was convinced. So I really don't think it really needs to be a debate.
The only thing with Daniel is because I honestly was thinking about adding him to the list, especially Katie, because since like you said, it's probably one of the more popular fan casts out there. It's just like, I don't know if he could do the voice, because I think Wolverine has an iconic voice, which, you know, obviously it originated in a comic book and nobody knows what Wolverine actually sounded like. So we're just basing it off of live action and animated content in the past.
Yeah.
But the Wolverine that we know kind of has that gruff, lower baritone voice. That was the only thing I'm like, I don't know if I could really picture Daniel's voice. Obviously, he's a very talented actor, so he could probably act, you know. That was the only thing that I was like, oh, I don't know.
No, that's a fair point.
It could be interesting if he goes like Bale Batman, where he like does an entirely new voice. That could be really interesting. I mean, probably hard on his vocal cords to do that all the time, because Bale only has to do that 70%, because the other part he's Bruce Wayne.
True. Well, and think he's not to be that person, but like, he has a British accent naturally, so he's already translating himself into an American accent. Well, technically Canadian accent, if you want to be accurate, because Wolverine is from Canada. So I think there's already that aspect, and then having to also lower your voice or create like a gruffness in it. So yeah, that's actually a really good point.
Cool. Well, now I think, Davis, it is your turn, my friend, to give your actors for Wolverine.
Yeah, so I don't think this comes as a big surprise, but I also had Zac Efron on my number one on my list.
Okay, Team Zach.
So we agree there. I think Zac Efron, maybe a couple of years ago, I wouldn't see it, but having seen Iron Claw, and I don't want to point out something that happened to him, but he was in an accident, so his jawline is very different than it was pre-accident. So I don't want to like point to that, because it's obviously, you know, a tragic situation that he went through. But I will say his jawline does look a little different, and it does look more Wolverine-esque. It's more gruff. It's more not square, but it's definitely like a tougher look.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, he looks more like childish, and I think that will help, because if Zac Efron does get cast, I'm sure a lot of Marvel fanboys and girls will come out of the woodworks and be like, the dude from High School Musical? No way. But I think having seen his performance in the Iron Claw, a very dramatic, gritty role, that's why he made my list, just because he has the physicality to it, and he clearly has the acting chops to do it. but then also just based on look. Like if he added some mutton chops or like a beard,
Right?
I could really, really see him do it. And I think just the fact that you could, I mean, look to his past. He, having to dance in High School Musical, he's obviously very athletic, and then he's added on a lot of muscle, and he's a lot more built and stockier. So that's kind of why he topped my list. And I think he could do a great Wolverine voice and just do more a dark and grittier tone. And honestly, I think it could also be a good next step in his career in terms of trying to get away from the High School Musical typecast. I think Ironclaw already brought him farther away from that. And I think if they cast him as Wolverine, I think it will help him open doors for him, I think, to other more dramatic and serious roles. But, Wolverine also does have a sense of humor. He does make pretty snarky comments. And so I think Zac Efron has the comedic chops as well to kind of pull that off.
Yeah, I'll let T take it because I just agree with everything you just said, personally.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting one. It's funny that both of you put this and that Kate, yours was shared with at least one other person on this podcast.
Yeah.
Both of your options. He was not someone that I thought of for this, but I do have to say, you two are kind of bringing me around. Like, I don't know that I would put him as my top. I think Dan, for me, I love him so much. And so I really, I don't know that I could go anybody but Dan, but I do think Zach is, rapidly rising because, to your point, he has the range that it takes to play such a complex character. Like, I know Wolverine seems like all gruff and rough and tumble, and Zach can play that, but he's also he's got a lot of interesting backstory. He has a lot of trauma. He does, play a lot of it off with comedy and things like that. And I think Zach could really play into a lot of those nuances super well. So yeah, I'd be into it. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, so him, and then the next guy that I had on my list, I think was also a very popular. Wolverine honestly was one of the more I had the most difficulty with when I was going through and trying to fan cast these characters. Wolverine was the toughest, and out of these three that we're talking about today, I think Cyclops was the easiest. I don't know if you guys can agree or disagree, but I think Wolverine and Jean Grey were very tough to me. But the second guy for Wolverine, I really don't want to botch his name. Taron Egerton from Kingsman.
I knew that's who you were going to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think he has the look, he has the charisma, he has the wit. He's, if anybody has seen Kingsman, he obviously knows how to, really kick some ass. So I think that is great. He has the wit and the snarkiness. And then he also just has the physicality of it too. And I saw he also was, I didn't see the movie, but he was a co-star with Hugh Jackman. I forget the name of the movie. So maybe Taron could reach out to him for some pointers if he were cast.
Well, wasn't Zach in The Greatest Showman with Hugh?
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There you go.
Just saying.
He's just been around the block. He knows all the dudes who are going to replace him.
But I think Taron especially, I just think he can bring the insanity, and I think he can get kind of berserk. I could see him going berserk. So I just think, and he's already got the look. You just got to add the little pointed hair and the beard, and I think he'd be perfect.
Yeah, he's like Daniel Radcliffe as far as, from my perspective, as far as casting. He's been a big fan cast for the past few years. I don't personally know much about his work. I really haven't seen him in much. I have seen clips of the Kingsman, so I've seen a little bit of that. I actually purposely skipped him on putting him on my list because I knew I was putting Daniel Radcliffe, and I was like, you can't put the biggest two names on the list. You at least have to come up with one on your own.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, I think I could see it. I think for me personally, I would need to see him do a little bit more physical work as far as even I've only ever seen him in the Kingsman, and he's all well groomed. So I think that's why it's very hard for me to think about him differently.
Yeah.
I would really have to see the physical alteration a little bit more in order to buy into that one, but I could still see it, I think.
I do think he could also, I think I've seen one of the Kingsman movies, or I've just been on Pedro Talk a lot over the years, but either way, I do think he could bring the intensity that Wolverine, Davis, I think you touched on this with him going berserk. I think some of these other actors, totally great, and I could actually see them doing a lot of the emotional talking parts, but I think in terms of the physical intensity and the loss of control that sometimes characterizes Wolverine, I think he could really carry that, just knowing what he does in the Kingsman and how physical and how much stunt work and stuff like that has to go into that film. I think coming from that background could really serve him well in doing Wolverine, because we've mentioned it before, like Wolverine is out there kicking butt and taking names, and I think to have an actor who's already played roles where he's had to be that person and do that is already starting, a step ahead.
And it seems like there's a similar trend so far, at least, of short, handsome men playing the character of Wolverine.
Well, I'm going to continue that trend because it's my turn to go, and I picked only short kings for this role.
Let's go. Shout out to my short kings.
Yes, exactly. As I mentioned, my first one was Daniel Radcliffe because, again, he's been just fan casted so many times, and physically, I think he could really pull off the look. But I actually had to Google like short actors because I was like, who am I going to think about here? Because the only person who kept popping in my head was Tom Holland because he's the king of short kings. And I was like, but he's taken. So I picked the OG short king, Josh Hutcherson.
Oh my
God. Our Wolverine.
Hot take.
Because he's short, yes, but he also has done the work of like really intense franchises. He is very physical as PETA in the games. We see that. And if you go from especially movie 1 to movie 2, you can see how he bulks up quite a bit. And I think obviously he would have some more work to do. He's a little lean. But, if he does a little bit more work, we saw him in Five Nights at Freddy's, how he can play those more mature roles now that he's grown up. He was in his early 20s when he did the Hunger Games. And I think this more mature version of Josh Hutcherson could really do it.
You know what? I kind of really like that. And I think if he hadn't been in Five Nights at Freddy's, I actually would have been like, that is the stupidest thing I've heard you say, T. Because I would have only been picturing Peter Malark. But seeing him more recently and seeing him in that movie where he's like definitely more gruff, he plays a more gruff character, I definitely can get on board with that, and I could see him pull this off.
I mean, even like I haven't seen this movie, but I know he plays like the villain in The Beekeeper with Jason Statham, which came out right on the heels of Five Nights at Freddy's. He had like a string where he was like everywhere.
Yeah.
And even those types of roles where he's playing the darker character, as we mentioned, like Wolverine, he is brainwashed. He goes through obviously the binding of the adamantium. Like
he's done that already.
Yeah. He does not have an easy life. And so I think Josh, having played some of these like really intense characters or these characters who have been in really awful situations. We love you, PETA. We're sorry that this happened to you.
Hashtag Team PETA.
Correct.
All day, every day.
The only correct answer.
Gail, go die in a hole.
Sorry, discount Hemsworth brother.
Yeah. The worst. Also like picking up Henry Cavill's scraps, but it's fine. But anyway... I just think Josh, having had some of that experience, he is, physically in a place where I think I could see him doing that, especially because thinking about PETA, he was blonde. Obviously, that's not going to work. But like his natural hair color is the darker hair color. To your point, he's pulling a little bit more of the gruff look lately, and I think he could do it. And I would die. I love him.
I'll give it to you.
I think if he could bulk up, and props to Hollywood because they could probably turn anybody into a hunk.
Well, they can't turn everybody into a hunk, and that's a shout out to Robert Pattinson, who doesn't want to work out for Batman.
I love him so much for that. It's so real. But also the implication that Josh is not already a hunk is offensive all day, every day.
But have you seen Wolverine? We all know what Wolverine looks like. He's got bowling balls for biceps.
Okay, yes, there's a difference between like Wolverine shape and a hunk. There's a spectrum there. Josh is still a hunk.
Okay, let me rephrase that. If he can bulk up to Wolverine also, but I will say out of all the actors we've mentioned, I think I could see Josh, I could see a cigar perched on Josh Hutcherson's lips a little bit more than the other actors. The snarkiness, I will say that.
Yeah, I think honestly, and I really mainly know him from like his younger like Bridge to Terabithia and Hunger Games. So I cannot say much about like his recent acting at all. But I will say the Hunger Games alone, he had so much range in that movie. If you think of where he started as PETA, getting pulled into the Hunger Games, and then at the very end, and like the brainwashing and the torture and all that crap that he went through. I mean, I truly could see him pull off that role because he also has the chops and the depth to do it.
Welcome to the dark side, friends. Josh Hutcherson for Wolverine. Campaign starts now. Let's go.
I like it. I like it.
Alrighty. And moving on to our second character of the episode, the lady in attendance, Jean Grey. So, Katie, give us your jeans.
That sounds so weird. Yeah, I actually struggled the most with her, and I think it's partially because I don't really know a lot of. I guess outside the MCU, I don't know a lot of female actresses. On top of that, a lot of the fan casts I was seeing were just like, they're redheads. So they were casting them. And I was like, as much as I love a good Sadie Sink, she's like 22. She's my age.
She's a
like,
child.
I don't really think she's right for Jean Grey when I'm casting people like Zac Efron, and I'm not going to say my Cyclops yet, but like, who are older, like 30, 40-year-old actors.
Well, that's the thing. Like, that's what I kept trying to tell myself the whole time is like, you have to, if you're going to pick an age range, everybody has to be, with the exception of like a Jubilee, right, who's supposed to be younger, but like everybody else is supposed to be in that range.
Right.
So it's like you either pick the 20-year-old actors or you pick the 30-some-year-old actors, and you have to kind of like stay in your lane, which like narrows the field.
No, and it definitely does. And so I really struggled. But the first one I went with was Victoria Pedretti. If you don't know who that is, she's from You. She plays Love. I know she's not like a redhead, but we can all fix that. Hello, Elizabeth Olsen isn't either, naturally. And they fixed that. But I went with her because I've seen her in You. I thought she was amazing in it. I know she's been in other things since. I haven't seen her in those. But I thought she also fit the look to me a little better. And also going off of, again, my fan casting for the other two roles here, I was trying to figure out who I could see in a love triangle, like who worked together. Because there's no point in fan casting if like you're just fan casting random people that don't actually work well on screen. So I thought she could do really well, especially with like a Zac Efron as a Wolverine. I think she's very talented. I mean, if you haven't seen You, Love is messed up in the head, and she plays the role impeccably well. Like, she's really insane in that. So I went with her for my first option for Jean.
I haven't seen the show You, but just based on the way you're describing the character, I think it's perfect for Jean Grey. At least, truth be told, I have not seen the original X-Men movies. I have seen the X-Men First Class round of movies. But I will say, based on just X-Men 97, her character, I mean, that character, her mind is all over the place.
Right.
Which, to no fault of her own, but whoever needs to play this character, they need to be able to play, you know, scramble-minded, kind of crazy, kind of not knowing what's going on. And just based on, again, I haven't seen the show You, but based on your description, I feel like that would be a really good choice.
Well, and I also, I mean, in the show, just for some context, and the main season, she's in season 2 and 3 mainly. So this really isn't a spoiler because they're working on season 5. So if you guys are behind, like, this is not going to be much. But, you know, the whole of season 2, she's like Joe's conquest for that season. And she's the girl he wants. And she's just like the nice girl, the girlfriend, everything. And then like she takes a turn. Like, he finds out she's just as dark as he is. And that is all of season 3 because they end up, you know, together, at least in season 3, and she's nuts, like in the best of ways, but she matches his energy very much. And so I kind of also wanted to pick somebody who could do that because Jean does have a lot of storylines where she kind of loses her sanity. The Phoenix storyline, then the Dark Phoenix storyline, she has to be able to play both sides of that coin. Even if they ever do the Madeline Pryor part with the Goblin Queen, you have to be able to play both sides of that coin. And I think she proved that in seasons 2 and 3 of You.
Fair. Yeah. I mean, going off of what Davis said, I also have not seen You, but you're kind of turning me to this person. I like it.
Yeah, I'm going to Google search her after.
Yeah, I love her. But I'm going to go to my second one. My second one might have just been because I picked Zac Efron. But I'm going with Lily James for my second one. She was also in Iron Claw. She was Pam and Pam and Tommy with Sebastian Stan.
Didn't she play Cinderella? Wasn't she the live action Cinderella?
Oh, I think so. I didn't watch that, but yeah. I really like her as an actress as well. And again, it might have been because I picked Zach for a Wolverine, and obviously they were love interests in Iron Claw together. But I also think she has the range. I also think she has the look. Again, a big part for me for Jean was like finding somebody to me who had the look and wasn't 20 and wouldn't have made it weird if I casted her with older actors. So I think she can do it. I also think, again, she has shown a lot of range in the things she's done. I still think personally Victoria Pedretti's my bigger choice. But yeah, I struggled on this one a little bit.
Yeah, Lily James is interesting because she's done a lot of like different stuff. But I also think I think the main thing I've seen her in is definitely Pam and Tommy. And like they have a very unstable relationship and she plays that exceptionally well.
Yeah.
So, you know, knowing that she's going to be in this love triangle where neither one of the guys are as awful to her as Tommy is to Pam, thank God. But, it is still like there's a lot of tension and like all of that. And depending on where, the live action chooses to place them in their lives, like we could see the beginnings of the love triangle, or we could see them like in the show, the animated series, where, they're 10 years into it. She's in a committed relationship to Scott, but definitely still stringing along Logan. So
Right.
it's like that also kind of depends like what level of tension there is. And I think someone who's able to play those kind of personal dynamics in that manner is definitely someone who, is definitely needed in that role for sure.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to Davis. Who are your picks for Jean Grey?
So maybe this will be a pattern, but so far, Katie and I seem to agree, not with the You actress because I've never seen the show, but my number one for Jean Grey is in fact Lily James.
Oh, look at us, man.
I loved her in Baby Driver, and Iron Claw, and kind of how I started this whole process when Taylor invited me onto the podcast, which again, thank you very much. It's an honor to be back. But I was just Google searching. I kind of started, and I sent a text to Taylor like maybe an hour ago. I'm like, are we casting like who we want to be in the MCU, or are we casting based on X-Men 97, which I guess is the same exact thing. But when I started this process, I looked at X-Men 97, but characters like on Google, and then tried to think, okay, who's the first actress that comes to my mind? And based on Jean Grey's look in the animated series, that's why I picked Lily James, because I think their physique looked really well. But I'll do a last minute pivot for the sake of conversation and switch in Anya Taylor-Joy as the top pick now, since for the sake of a conversation, since we kind of already talked about Lily James. I just think she has this unique look that I think would be great. And she can play very kind of like shaken, dramatic characters, like in Split. I think she did a really good job in showing how she can play scared, she can play afraid, she can play confident. All those three came out in her character for there. But also, I think just based on the trailers I've seen from Mad Max Furiosa, the new movie that's coming out, I haven't seen the movie, but based on the trailers, her fierceness in those trailers, I think really pair well with Jean Grey. So she could play kind of the scared, oh, I don't know what's going on, what's happening in my mind. But I think she could also have the confidence and fierceness to play a more powerful version of Jean Grey if for whatever plot line and comic story they pick up and decide to adapt in the future. I think Anya Taylor-Joy would be a good choice.
Yeah, she was one that kind of kept coming up for me as well. And I think it's hard because I haven't seen some of the newer stuff she's in, but I did love her in Split. That movie was really amazing. Shout out to our Professor X.
I was gonna say James McAvoy.
Yeah, but I did think she did really, really well, and she does have that. I mean, she's like an in-demand actress. They are casting her in absolutely everything, and it's because she has the range to do just about everything. I would have never thought to put her in the Mad Max movie, and here she is. And clearly, like, she belongs there. So I could see it. I think I avoided her because I kind of am like, are we sticking with the big names? Because I also think about, when they did Thor, Chris Hemsworth and Tom Hiddleston were literally nobodies. There was a whole article about Marvel casting two nobodies for that movie.
And Chris just hosted or co-hosted the Met Gala.
Well,
so
right.
I think they did okay.
Exactly. So that's what I mean. So a part of me is like, I know we're at the point of the MCU where we are getting a lot of big names. I mean, we had freaking Angelina Jolie in one of our movies. So,
Mother.
I mean, it's hard, but I do think if we're going with like a big name, Anya Taylor-Joy, for sure, I could definitely see play the role.
Yeah, I also think, Davis, you touched on this. Like, physically, I can literally see her with the red hair and the headdress. Like, I'm like picturing it in my mind's eye, and I'm like, no, she could totally do this. Like, from a look perspective, like, she has that, like, going off of the animated series, like, that really angular bone structure.
Yeah.
Lily's face is a little rounder, so it's a little harder for me to picture her kind of in the way that Jean is dressed in the animated series. But I think Anya's face, like, just really fits with kind of the way that Jean's costume is set up, at least in the iteration that we've seen most recently in the show.
I actually think she'd fit very well with a Daniel Radcliffe Wolverine.
Yeah, actually, that's who I was imagining her with, too.
Yeah.
All right, well, this is going to be interesting because neither one of y'all touched on either one of my actresses. So we're going to bring in some brand new names into this conversation. And I decided to go two different routes. I went one redhead, one natural redhead, and one non-natural redhead because I didn't want to limit myself. But I did feel like one redhead really could be someone who could carry this role, and that's Phoebe Deniver, who a lot of you will probably know her from Bridgerton, the first season. She plays Daphne, and I definitely think that she has, the ability to carry this. That's obviously a very dramatic role and very fun, but it's very romantic too. And knowing that Jean is going to be the center of a romance and a love triangle between these two dudes, definitely want someone who's going to, be able to touch on that aspect of who Jean is. But also, she did a recent movie, and I'm forgetting the name, but it's the guy who plays young Han Solo in
Oh,
Solo.
Aaron
They did
Aldenrich
a
or something
movie
like that?
together. Yes. And I haven't seen it, but even from the trailers, like, it's definitely on my to watch list. It's very intense. It's about a really intense relationship where they're also like competing for the same like job opportunities. So there's a lot of like strife there. And it seems like it really just grows and it gets really very intense. And I think, seeing the little bit that I've seen in the trailers and things like that of her performance, she can really carry something that's going to be at a big scale. These Marvel movies are not small movies.
Mm-mm.
They are intense. The X-Men themselves are some of the most involved characters that you're going to get. They're carrying some of the heaviest themes that you're going to see in all of the MCU, just based on the themes that they carry in the books. Is something that we've talked a lot about as we've been covering the show. So I really think that she could be a very interesting Jean Grey, and her being a natural redhead doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I don't know anything she's been in. Like, you say Bridgerton, I haven't seen it, but I did do a quick Google search so I could at least see her. And I do think, physically speaking, she very much would fill that role as Jean. I think we were talking a lot about Jean's just like her facial structure and everything, and I actually really see it. She reminds me a lot of Sophie Turner, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see her, fill in for that role and take it. I don't know her acting abilities, but I'm sure if she's in something like Bridgerton, she's obviously got to be good. So that's all I can say on that one. But I do, looks wise, I give her my stamp of approval.
I did see season 1 of Bridgerton, and obviously, since we're kind of keeping in the back of our minds that these three characters will be in a love triangle, in Bridgerton, it's a very romantic TV series. It's very, forget the right word for it, but it's very like sappy and like ooey gooey romance. So if they need an actress who can play like the love angle and the romantic angle, she surely can do that.
Yeah, I love her. She's great. And my second actress for Jean Grey, I wanted to go with a lady who already has kind of made her way in some more action-filled movies. So I went with Ana de Armas, who has been in Bond. She did that action movie with Chris Evans where she's the spy and he plays the kind of bumbling romantic interest who she has to save. So I thought that her background, playing those types of roles, even Knives Out, I think is an interesting role to think about when you're thinking about Jean, and all that goes into that, because she's kind of this innocent person who has this big secret and all of that. If I'm remembering the movie correctly, it's been like 4 years since I've seen it, but whatever. I just thought she would be great with her background in playing a lot of these interesting action leading lady roles. And the hair, look, that's what they make wigs for. That's what they make hair dye for. That's not a problem. I think the rest of her like facial structure and the things that we've talked about before could really work. And I really, like I said, I really like that background and being able to play a leading lady in an action movie, because there's going to be a lot of action here. And yes, Jean's doing a lot of it like waving her arms Wanda like, but she's got to do a lot of other stuff too. So that's why Ana de Armas made my list.
Well, I think also with Ana de Armas, you just got to look at the movie Blonde. Granted, it was not a good movie in my opinion, but you're just saying like, oh, she's not a natural redhead. She's not a natural brunette, and she played one of the most, a natural blonde, and she played one of the most iconic blonde icons. Sorry to say the word icon in two different versions in the same sentence, but so obviously she can pull off another hair color, but also too in that movie, there's a lot of scenes where Marilyn Monroe is losing her mind. She's going crazy. So just having seen how she can pull off a different hairstyle, or she can pull off a blonde, so I'm guarantee you she can probably pull off a redhead, but also the more kind of losing your mind, like what's going on that she brought to life through Marilyn Monroe and Blonde, I think would be perfect for Jean Grey. So I think those two, just look at the movie Blonde. She can do it. She can do kind of like exactly what Taylor was talking about. She can do it.
Yeah, I think personally she'd be lowest on my list out of everybody we put forward today. And I think she's one that came up when I was looking as well. And I immediately was like, no, doesn't fit the Jean Grey look. She just doesn't give me the vibe. Like, I have to go off the vibe. And I don't see it. I think I could see her doing a different superhero for sure in the future. I could definitely see her doing somebody else, a darker superhero or anti-villain. Honestly, I'm looking at a picture of her right now because it helps me think. I kind of feel like an Elektra would be a very interesting role for her because she gives me that dark vibe.
Put that out in the universe. Yes.
Yeah.
Although, didn't they recast? No, they recast Kingpin's wife, not Elektra. Never mind.
Right. So, like, obviously the MCU's got a lot they want to do with that kind of nitty-gritty section of their repertoire. And if they were to ever do somebody like Elektra on their big screen or whatever, like, I'm looking at her and I see her more for that, not so much for Jean Grey. And I know, like, I'm probably getting caught up on the fact of hair. And to Davis's point, he's like, she can wear a wig. We've seen her in blonde. Like, she has the capability to do it. It's not that big of a deal. But I definitely feel like the dark hair suits her so well and it brings a darker feature to her that I just think she belongs with a different superhero or villain or anti-villain, whatever character.
So you're saying, like, why force it when she could maybe fit another character better?
Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that why force her into this role when I think there are, I mean, between the 5 other actresses we named and of course like some of the other amazing comic book characters out there that I think she'd fit much better into, why morph her into a Jean Grey when I think we have some other options?
Fair
I
enough.
do have, because I kind of substituted Anya for Lily, so I do want to throw, if we can do it quickly, throw in one more actress that I thought would probably be, I don't know if it would make too much sense or not, but I was just thinking, like, who are some very talented natural redhead actresses? Well, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this actress isn't a natural redhead, but Emma Stone. That was another actress that I really wanted to put on my list, but I thought maybe it would be too big of a name. I wasn't quite sure the route we were going if we were trying to do some deep cuts, but I thought Emma Stone was super obvious. So I don't know how you guys feel about her. She obviously acts. She's won Oscars. She already has the hair. She has the facial structure. She could play kind of the craziness. If you guys saw, what was the movie she was just in? Poor Things. She displayed an incredible amount of range in that movie. So I thought maybe Emma Stone could be another name to throw in the ring.
Yeah, I was seeing her as well. I think it's hard because I'm caught up with her as Gwen from obviously The Amazing Spider-Man. So I'm like very much caught up with her in there. And then on top of that, I see her as so much of a softer person. And I don't know why. I think it's because her personality is hilarious. Like, I think she's a hilarious person. And I just don't see her for some reason playing Jean for that reason. But I definitely think, I don't actually know if she's a natural redhead. I don't think she is.
Her name's not even Emma.
That's true.
Her real name's Emily. Fun fact.
Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. She's like a hit or miss. I wouldn't be against it because I know she has the ability to do it. I think look-wise, I don't place her in that role.
Maybe she can't be powerful. She can play smart and witty, but maybe she can't be like, you wouldn't look at her and fear her.
Yeah, like I think I don't quite see her doing all parts of Jean Grey's story. I think that's probably the best way to put it.
Fair enough.
Fair.
Yeah.
I personally just want her back as Gwen, but I want her to play Spider-Gwen, so making her Jean Grey would take her off the board for that. So we're going to save her, like Anna, we're going to save her for a different role, in my opinion.
Yeah, and also, like, I think that's a little weird because while you technically never brought her into the MCU, you reference her in Andrew Garfield coming back. So I think that's also a little bit of a gray area because of that.
True. Alrighty. And now for our final side of the triangle, the man, the myth, the legend, Scott Summers, Cyclops himself.
I had the easiest time casting him, shockingly. One, because I have a very clear one that I've talked about for like ever, and that's Henry Cavill. That is Mr. Dorito Shape himself.
There we go.
And come on, let's admit it, because Scott's got the Dorito shape. You need somebody really big and bulky for that role. He is a built man. And I could see him for sure pulling that role forward and giving it a lot. I think with some of the other people we've mentioned, I think they would fit in a very nice little triangle together. And he's also a very skilled actor, on top of there being a lot of rumors about him possibly being cast. I know like some of the people have also said maybe he's been cast as a Wolverine. too tall in my opinion, and I also just don't want to see him in that role because I think we've gotten some of the darker roles from him. I think he'd be a really good Boy Scout in Scott Summers. And that's just, I mean, also he's going to make a list in the future for somebody else, just an FYI. This isn't going to just stay true to one character in one fan cast because I do have him as somebody else in the future. But I do think this could be an interesting role for him.
I think the interesting thing about Scott is he is a little bit like Superman.
Correct.
In that, like, they both have such a strong sense of morals.
Mhm.
And so he's almost like playing, not powers wise, but personality wise, he's almost like playing the Marvel version of Superman.
Right. And you also have to think about it this way. And I know it sounds stupid, but you really do when you do these fan castings, everyone. He is never going to have his eyes showing. And you have to think about that. You truly have to think about sunglasses, the visor when he's suited up, unless they go X-Men route where he kind of, well, no, he does have sunglasses, but a lot of times I feel like he's wearing a visor. Like, you have to remember that. And I think he could do that very well and pull off just wearing the visor, and you still get the vibe. You get the right, momentum going with him. So I like him personally. I like the comparison to Superman. That's a good choice.
So I think I recently saw him in, might not get the name fully correct because this is a mouthful, but it was called The Art of Ungentlemanly Warfare. It's a movie out in theaters right now that I really, really like. And in that, he obviously is still the bulky hunk that we know and love. But his character in the movie is a leader. And I think when I was watching it, I'm like, okay, like he can lead a team. He has that capability. So I think that can also like add to your point where you need someone who can convincingly play someone that people will respect and follow to their death. If you can think about it that way.
Well, right. And actually, as you said that, you kind of reminded me, he also plays Sherlock in Enola Holmes. And I think that's another, when you were saying people respect and everything, I mean, you see in that role people's point of view of him as Sherlock and how they respect him and they look up to him. He walks into a room and it changes everything. And obviously, he by no means is the main part of Enola Holmes. It's called Enola Holmes, not Sherlock Holmes for a reason. That's all Millie Bobby Brown's stage right there. But he definitely plays the role really well. And so I could see him doing this very easily. But if I go to my second one, I'm going to add to T's list of Hunger Games alum.
Oh.
And I went with Sam Claflin, my boy Finnick Odair, mainly because I got to see him again because that was rotten what they did to Finnick. But I actually think he would be a really interesting Cyclops. I think he might have to bulk a little bit again for the role, like Finnick level bulk again. I'm not sure what he looks like currently. But yeah, I don't know. I think he could be interesting. He's definitely kind of always had that. I feel like Scott has his smooth moments. He's clearly gotten genes, so he has those moments. But he also is a little bit of a sass master. And he has the abilities to do that. We saw that in Finnick. And then what was the one he was in? It had Neville Longbottom.
Oh, duh. Me before you.
Yeah, the one that like makes us like cry. Yeah. So, and he also has the ability to like, and I only say that not because Scott's like a poopy head, but he has the ability to be a poopy head. And so, range. But I also think, again, if you just look at him as Finnick, there you go. I think he could fit the role very well. And again, with some of these people, I mean, he would be an interesting one with like Lily James and Zac Efron. But I mean, so would Henry Cavill, but he would fit, I think, in my casting list with those two, I think, a little more. Or actually, I guess Daniel Radcliffe could work too.
I mean, can we get a reunion with Josh Hutcherson? Come on.
I don't know, man.
That's true. They obviously have chemistry.
I don't know. I was going off of like my list because I can't remember everybody we threw out. But yeah, I mean, that could work. So I don't know. Just wanted to throw him out there. I kind of see him for that role.
Do we think he's a little older than some of the other actors?
I don't really know because I don't know how old he is.
I just lately he's been, and look, this can be fixed, but like lately he's been looking a little scruffy and it adds a few years.
Oh, he's only 37.
Okay. So it's just the way he's like wearing his hair and facial hair right now.
Yeah, I'm looking at pictures. He currently kind of looks like he's just rolled out of bed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which can be fixed though, right? Like that is easy to fix.
Yeah, for sure. That's an easy fix. Like go sit in a makeup chair for like an hour and he's got it done. But all right, cool. That was my only thing where I was like, he gives the appearance of being someone a little older when he has the beard. But luckily, like Scott in his Boy Scoutness is a clean shaven man. So we can take a few years off Sam Claflin's looks by making him clean shaven.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, also correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't Sam, I think at least if I can remember correctly from the Hunger Games movie, he's very expressive with his mouth, if that makes sense?
Yes, he is.
So I think it would be perfect because with the visor on, you're going to have to do a lot of this is obviously not the correct terminology, but mouth acting. So I think that could also help.
No, that's such a good point. I didn't really think about that, but that's such a good point. He definitely has a really good ability to, as he's talking, really enunciate with his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And because we won't be able to see his eyes and read into it, it is actually really critical to be able to show his expressions that way. So that's an amazing point. And I really like that. That's actually made me really appreciate it more.
An expressive mouth, we'll put it that way.
Alrighty. Well, Davis, I'm now curious if you and Katie for the third time in a row have one in common.
So surprisingly, no.
No,
Davis. I actually have three
Streak
people
broken.
on my list this time, and none of them are similar to Katie. So we are breaking the mold here.
Shame.
So the first one that I have on my list, again, this also depends because the top two people I have are different in age, not significantly, but purely just based on if you were to Google search both these actors, they're not, I don't think they're that far apart. But the first person on my list for Cyclops, this might be too much, I don't know, but Jacob Elordi.
Okay, I almost had him.
Yeah, he'd have to bulk up a little bit because to me he's obviously very handsome, but I think he's on the leaner side.
Yeah, you need to be again, Dorito level for Cyclops.
But he could bulk up, and I just think his charisma, just based on how he looks, I think his facial structure, he's already got the hair. So he was the first actor who popped in my mind for Cyclops, and I think he's very, very tall, so he could bring a very big stature to it if they need someone who's physically intimidating. And I think if he just put on, 5-10 pounds of muscle, I think he could really pull it off.
I like that option.
Yeah, I thought about him, but the reason I went no was because I think it's because I'm typecasting him in my head, but I always see him with darker characters. So for me, don't get me wrong, I want to see him in the MCU at some point, but I think for me it's more in a villain role or an anti-hero role because he does play those morally gray / just straight up evil people really well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I don't know. And I think he kind of gravitates towards those roles. I think he likes them. If you think about Elvis, that's definitely an interesting Elvis was an interesting dude, and we'll just leave it at that. And so for him to take roles like that, or even his role in Euphoria, he definitely is doing a lot of those not quite so cut and dry Scott characters who are so truth and honesty and values and stuff like that. It could, on the other hand, though, be a really interesting way for him to break out of that typecast if he does go for a character who's so completely opposite from a lot of the ones that he's gotten, or a lot of the roles that he's gotten recently.
And to me, the biggest thing too was and again, I think because I've watched it so recently, how these characters are portrayed in Xmen 97 are very foremost and prominent in my mind right now. But especially Jacob's voice, I think he could do a very good Scott Summers, again, which the voice is not a huge percentage of importance, but I do think that that's part of the reason why I was oh, Jacob Elordi would be good, but just based on the voice of Cyclops in the show, I was this seems like something that he could pull off.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I kind of like it, but I kind of want to hear what else you have to say because I'll see if I like him the most or rank him lower, depending on your other picks.
Okay, so number 2, a little bit older and would give a more mature look and take. And again, this might be too obvious to me. It seemed too obvious, but I really like Glenn Powell.
Stop it! I was gonna put Glenn.
Yes, yes,
I love Glenn Powell.
I was gonna say Glenn Powell, especially having seen him in Top Gun. I think could really pull it off. His look, his charisma, his jawline. I think he could do it.
No, stop, because I literally love Glenn. I was thinking about it, but I was no, don't put him.
I struggled so much with my second one. Glenn was my second one. And then I was walking around my apartment and unloading the dishwasher, and it hit me. And I was Glenn Powell, he's perfect. And to your point with the jawline, not to be all
and the smile. Can't forget about the smile.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. But those things are super important, especially for this character, because as we talked about, the top half of his face is not important. It doesn't matter. It's covered to some extent 100% of the time. So that bottom half really has to carry and define the character. And I think Glenn Powell, like I think about the bottom half of his face and I'm
It's
like,
very prominent.
I see Scott. Like,
Yeah, that already right to the top.
So he was my number 2 just because you take out his eyes, it's just like a square jaw. It's very like, and he has the ability to be serious, but I also think he also has the ability to show a softer side. So maybe when he's in deep conversations with Jean in potential future movies or TV shows, I think he could do the very like grounded, morally, centered, goody, Boy Scout, but then I think he could also play the softer, more vulnerable side as well.
Yeah, I agree. I love that choice. With a Zac Efron? Stop.
Actually, though, wait, stop.
I know we said 2. The third person on my list, we don't have to like talk too much about him, but I thought Logan Lerman would be another good choice.
Stop. You are like after my heart today.
The Kings. You are going after all of them.
Although isn't he a short king? Actually, let's throw him on the Wolverine list.
He's like medium size. He's like in the middle.
But he's got such a Boy Scout look. I thought it'd be perfect.
Yeah, but you can't cover those beautiful blue eyes. I'd be too sad.
No, that's a waste. That's a waste. He has to be a character who you can see his full face because he's so pretty.
Yeah.
It's like unfair.
I just love him though.
We're gonna take him off the list because we'll save him for something else. I don't know that it's another X-Men, but like eventually, because the MCU is gonna get everyone eventually. Like they're just gonna run out of new actors. Like that's the other thing. I was like, what about this person? Oh, they've already been in an MCU project.
I know. Well, a lot of fan casting sites that I was going on, because I just wanted to get an idea before I felt like I needed to know who I felt it the most from. And a lot were like casting people already in the MCU. And I'm like, guys, no hate towards you, no hate, no shade, but we can't. Like, we cannot. And if you want the X-Men to be a part of the big next few, like, couple phases, we're not going to cast somebody who, like, clearly already played a big role in Marvel. That just doesn't make sense.
Sorry, Chris Evans.
Yeah. No, actually, because he would play Scott Summers very well, but...
Well, aren't Scott Summers and Steve Rogers the same character, except one is like super, super strong and one shoots lasers?
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, I also meant him playing Captain America and also Johnny Storm.
Oh, true. But maybe he's coming back for that, so.
They've done it before, so maybe let's not lose hope on some of the actors.
True.
Yeah. I mean, look at Gemma Chan, who's literally been in 2 MCU.
Well, she was like blue in 1, though, so it was kind of easier to like write that off.
Right. But like that makes it like that's the only thing. Like if they like we've had people come in. For example, Kelsey Grammer played Beast in that end credit scene in the Marvels. You could bring Kelsey Grammer in because that did not look like it was CGI. It was just his voice.
True.
So there's like other options. Like you could bring in Bradley Cooper. You could bring in Vin Diesel.
True.
Because we've only ever had their voices. So there's some workarounds there.
Fair.
But yeah, I think we should stick with it, though. I think they should just cast new actors. Don't bring them back unless they're playing a different version of the same character. I think let's try to find new people.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right, then last but not least, I'm going to go through mine. You already know I had Glenn Powell because, enough said, Glenn Powell. But my other one is the other side of the Jacob Elordi coin, which is Austin Butler.
Ooh.
Hear me out. I feel like I wanted to go, who's like really hot right now? And I feel like in every conversation you have Jake, not hot as in like physically hot, though he is. I meant like hot in Hollywood. But you know, you have, for every role that Jacob Elordi has that's really interesting, Austin Butler has his own, right? I just feel like they're like always ripping out movies at the same time. They both played Elvis. They're both kind of like doing these same things. So it's interesting that you had Jacob Elordi, and that's also one of the reasons I didn't put him, because I couldn't have literally both sides of the same coin. I know what you're going to say. Austin Butler, he's a little like lean, but we saw him bulk up a little bit for Dune, and he completely transformed for that. I mean, he's horrifying. And I just think, you know, give him a few months in a gym with someone who's gonna be like a good trainer for him. So I feel like he could do it. Also, I just want to point out, yes, Chris Evans was built as Johnny Storm, but he was not a Dorito. He got there. So there is room and time for someone who is fit to get more fit. Hence Austin Butler.
So I'm gonna be completely honest with you, T. I hate this take.
I can see it
really
on your face.
hate this take. And not because I have any hate towards Austin Butler, but I do not see him as Scott Summers at all in any way, shape, or form. I've actually told you before I could more accurately see him as somebody like Gambit. And I think he'd play Gambit 10 times better. We already know he'd commit to being able to do the accent very well.
Fair.
And I think he could fit the look very well. He's also tall and, to your point, has a little bit of that lankier look. So I think I see him in that department way more than I see Scott Summers. It feels like your one pick for Jean Grey, that Ana de Diamaris, I forget.
The Armas?
Yes.
Okay, that was a solid pick.
But I feel like, again, it'd be like she could do it or he could do it, but it'd be like stretching him to get him into the role more than there's a better role for him elsewhere.
Fair. I don't disagree.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. To be honest, like, I was trying to avoid looking at fan casts because I wanted to find people myself and what I thought.
Okay, I see the shade, Davis.
No, I meant more just like I just wanted to try my best at coming up with like who I thought would be good.
Fair.
And not be influenced. But that was a lot. That was very hard just because like I felt like it could create better conversation. But anyway, I saw one before I started this. I'm like, I saw it. I don't know if that counts, but Austin Butler as Gambit was one of them, and I think that he would be a better fit for him. I will agree.
We'll talk about that next episode.
You just want him all for yourself, Caitlin. That's all. I know.
Listen, I'm just saying I don't think he would fit as well. And I'm thinking of like a very specific like carpet that he was on, and I think it was probably for Elvis. And I'm thinking of him. It's the all black suit, and his hair's a little bit longer, and he's got a little bit of like a shadow on it. Like, I don't know, like some kind of beard, not a lot. And I'm thinking, yeah, you give him dark hair, like take the blonde out completely. You put him in the outfit and you got a Gambit already.
Yeah, I could see it.
Just saying. Again, more on this next episode, but he is already, I guess I've given away one of my castings for him.
Sneak preview. Alrighty, well, that is it for our first episode of Fancasting live action X-Men. We started out the gate strong with one of our two love triangles that we are grouping together in this casting. And we'll be continuing on with the rest of the cast in future episodes, 3 at a time. So get ready because it's going to be a good time. Make sure that you are following on your podcast platform of choice so that you get notifications and are ready for every single episode of Sisters Assembled. And of course, checking out the website and blog for all of the extra goodies on there. We'll have a little write-up, a summary of all of the fan castings at the end so that you can see everybody who is fan cast by us and can refer to that because I know it's a lot to go through what will be 4 episodes of fan casting. So anyway, long story short, check out the website. It's a good spot. And make sure you're also taking a peek at the blog.
Yeah, and you guys can also give us a follow on Twitter at SisAssembledPod, Instagram and Threads at Sisters Assembled, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel where we have our episodes and our Sister Scoop weekly news always coming out. So go ahead and subscribe to that as well. And we are continuing with a fan casting again next week. Our next round, we will be doing Gambit, Magneto, and Rogue, our other iconic love triangle. And of course, Davis will be joining us again next week. We want to thank him for being here this week and joining us for the next couple episodes. It's awesome to have you on the podcast again. It's been a while. So thank you for coming on.
Yeah, of course. Happy to do it. I mean, this has been a lot of fun. It was hard. It was tough to fan cast these roles, but it was a lot of fun. So, and it's always a pleasure to be on the podcast. So thank you for having me back and having me back in the future.
Of course. And you know, we wouldn't have you on if we didn't make you do your homework beforehand. So always be prepared. But we will be continuing our fan casting. So stick with us and Marvel, as Marvel just blew your mind. So let's talk about it.